This is Kingston Live for January 2019. For our inaugural show, we'll be talking with Jay Middaugh, director of Live in Kingston, and we'll be chatting with The Wilderness, who just released a new EP, Seminary Road. Hello and welcome to Kingston Live. We will discuss all the things happening in the first capital of Canadian music. My name is Johnny San. I'm here with Rob Howard.
Hello, hello.
Hello. Riley Jabour.
Hello, friends.
And Jay Middaugh.
Hey.
And we will speak to him in a moment. So welcome all of you, and welcome to anyone listening to the inaugural, the premiere, the first Kingston Live show. It's very exciting. We've been working at this for a while, so...
Well, I'm super stoked because we're sitting here with Jay, and if it wasn't for... It's so funny, Kingston Live, we've just kind of landed on that name for our podcast.
I was going to suggest it when you said it. I was like, that's what I thought. I was thinking about it. I was like, that's not... Yeah, you can just turn it around and then...
It seemed like the obvious choice.
Yeah.
So,
but it was his film Live in Kingston that, was part of the inspiration behind all of this.
I do want to talk to you. Now, Rob is our executive producer, and he's an author, and he is a marketing guru extraordinaire. I think that's the title, the titles we all agreed upon. You are a big part in getting this off the ground. I did want to talk to you briefly before we talk to Jay about what this is all about and why it's important and what we're doing here.
One thing that I've always loved about Kingston is, the lifestyle here and stuff. And having lived in other cities in Canada like Toronto and Calgary, and appreciated, the cultural offerings that they have and stuff like that. Especially Toronto and their music scene and stuff. And Calgary's got a great music scene too. It's different. It's not Toronto, and that's what makes it awesome out there. But when I was wanting to move back to Ontario and think of all the places that I could live, I didn't really want to go back to Toronto. But I came to settle in Kingston, and one of the things that I really found compelling about Kingston was just how great its live music scene. I mean, I think Kingston, believe it or not, probably carries a reputation outside of its own borders for being a bit of a music capital, right? I mean, we've got Canada's rock royalty.
Well, and I think there are people that live in Kingston that are less aware of it than people outside of Kingston sometimes.
Probably,
I remember there was a friend of mine who was staying here for a few weeks, and he came in one day and he's like, "You'll never guess who I met today." And I was like, "Who?" And he said, "Paul Langlois." And I'm like, "So?" And we love the hip here, but if you're not from Kingston, it's different. There are people... you see, Rob Baker is so recognizable. You'll just see him, downtown walking the dog and nobody bothers him. Mm-hmm. But later you realize to people outside of Kingston, that's a big deal, apparently.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And that's the thing. It's there are so many great artists and bands that call Kingston home. And that's kind of cool, right? That's the fact that such great, this decent sized Canadian city seems to have this abundance of fantastic talent here. And not only that, but there's also an abundance of places to see live music. And so I'm not a musician, and I also don't own a venue that that plays live music or anything like that. But as a music consumer all my life and someone who appreciates music, and especially Canadian music, Kingston is awesome for that. And so I think I've always seen this side of Kingston that I've really appreciated personally. And the second thing was when I saw when Jay's film Live in Kingston premiered at the Kingston Canadian Film Festival. I went in not knowing really what it was about, but thought it was really cool. I thought I was going to see a documentary on, Kingston's music scene. And then I saw it and I thought I was so inspired because, it's much more than a documentary. There's a great storyline that carries it through but I felt like someone else got it too. Someone else out there appreciated what Kingston has from a musical standpoint, and did something about it.
And you and I have had discussions before about the importance of live music. And I remember how you described it as a product with a very short shelf life.
Live music is it's about the ultimate perishable, right? I mean, its best before date is immediate, you know? So, as a product, live music is amazing because you have to be there in the room to appreciate and participate in that performance, because if you're not, that same performance will never happen again, and whatever experience there was to be had disappears, in an instant and stuff like that. And so that's something that I've always found really intriguing about the whole live music thing.
Well, and I think we'll sort of segue to our first official guest on Kingston Live. Now, there's no shortage of people in the city working in the arts, but people that have found as many ways to get involved as our guest today are few and far between. Writer-director Jay Middaugh has applied himself to enriching the city's music scene from an assortment of creative angles. A musician himself, Jay has produced music videos and captured live shows with his company Happy Kid Productions, runs Sleeping Giant School of Music, and in 2017, he debuted his first feature film, Live in Kingston, a romantic comedy featuring performances by 12 local bands and artists, including P.S. I Love You, Sarah Harmer, and Miss Emily. And most recently, he directed, shot, and edited Miss Emily's music video for her single, Hold Back the River. So, Jay, we've already introduced you, but once again, thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, no problem.
I guess we'll start just from the beginning. What inspired this movie?
There were these two recordings I did. There was a band called the Aldous Hucksters, which is a band that doesn't exist anymore. It was Tom Savage and Kevin Bowers, two friends of mine that play music, and they had this project together. And I went with this camcorder I had bought off Kijiji for like $60. And it was actually a really nice camcorder. I just sold it for $15 like 3 days ago.
That's amazing.
Without the power supply. And I took it to this show that was at the Toucan. It's way too dark there to film, at least with that technology. I managed to cut it so it looked like a multicam. Like I would take a song that was 4 minutes and make a 60-second cut that looked like 4 cameras. And I was just like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Like that worked or whatever. And then after that, I had moved ahead a little bit in time. I had bought a DSLR so I could shoot better looking video. And my friend Zane Whitfield, who runs North of Princess Studio, he had, was she then Emily Fennell? I think she was just Emily Fennell then, in for a recording session for this song that Chris Koster was producing. And he's like, her manager wants web content, come down and film it. And so I was there for like 15 minutes, and Emily is such a great performer that we managed to make like a pretty decent little music video in 15 minutes, because we did one take, like I did a bunch of B-roll and then I did one take of her singing on the mic, and it just all worked out perfectly. And I got paid like $50 because I wasn't even supposed to cut it, but I got home and I liked the footage. I was like, I don't want someone like messing with this. So I cut it and just I'm like, here, you can use it. You don't have to pay me for the edit, but just use it. And they did. And I think she still has it on our website and I still have it in my reel. And this is from 6-7 years ago or something. Yeah. And I was like, oh, I could do this. I could make these music videos. And sort of those two things, I was like, oh, this could work. And I'd always been interested in writing. I went to school for a time for English, and I wrote a terrible novel when I was like 21. And I love comedy, and it was a way to marry like the love of fictional comedy. And then I had this other skill set of making these live music videos, and it's sort of a way to put them together. And that's sort of the real reason. And then the thing I say on the radio is about like, as I was aging, I was going to way less live music, and I missed it, but I just couldn't be out at 1 a.m. That's the headliners go on at like 1. And when I was in the shows, it was you could still keep that going for a little while, and then you're like you don't even want to play the shows anymore. You're like, and I thought, it's a shame this music's getting lost. No one's hearing it. You're talking about it being this ephemeral thing, this ultimate perishable, but like so many people have aged out of wanting to be at a bar at 1 a.m. Yeah, and that's the best music. That's when the headliners play. It's
promoters, if you're listening to this episode.
And there's a model, right? It's a model to help the venue make more money because it keeps people there longer. If you put the worst act at the end, everyone leaves. So they have to put the best act at the end. And so I thought, could we capture these performances? And then you're like, okay, we have a music documentary. And as soon as you say documentary, you gain an audience and you lose an audience. And I think it was that audience being lost that I was sort of interested in, that sort of mainstream audience, because they're the ones who aren't seeing these shows. Could we disguise this as a romantic comedy, which is something I like. I like writing that stuff anyways, and I was interested in making that too. But it's like a Trojan horse for a music documentary.
I'm curious about the premiere. So this premiered at the 2017 Kingston Canadian Film Festival, correct?
Yeah.
What was the reaction? Because I know I saw it for the first time just recently at the screening room. We had that.
That was a fun screening.
It was a fun screening, yeah.
The occasional pausing. I don't know what was going on.
Yeah, there were a few little
buffering
technical difficulties.
Just to let me not relax. They're like, Jay looks pretty relaxed out there. Let's just freeze this for 5 seconds so his heart gets really tight.
You were in the back. I couldn't see you.
Oh
so,
my gosh.
But no, that was a neat event for those who weren't there. In the spirit of the film, Paper Ladies, I guess, opened the film. There was a live performance prior to the movie. But yeah, it was the first time I'd seen it. And I know there were moments where I really got into it. And when the musical performances in the movie were finished, I almost felt like applauding at times.
So
I'm curious.
At the premiere, there were 2 screenings at the film festival in 2017. The first one was Friday night. And it was a really hot crowd. And most of our comp tickets were that night, like, so bands and friends of bands. And the festival was super generous with us. I think they gave us something like 50 tickets, like some enormous number. They were so kind. And when it came time for the premiere, and he was just like, yeah, you guys can have 50 tickets. And I was like, oh my, for 200, that's 200 seat place. Like, that's a lot of comp tickets.
Yeah.
But they're so supportive of local filmmaking. And if you make a local film, they'll give you a chance to screen it on a big screen with an audience, which is amazing. I think I've gotten more credit than I deserve, considering like making a movie is such a collaborative thing. And even just getting to that you guys want to have me be your first guest on this podcast that you like thank me for inspiring. Like, that's so nice. I don't think I deserve it because so many, like, there's a lot of people that made this movie.
Right.
Yeah. A lot, and there's even people that worked in a way that I wasn't even, like Matt Rogalski, who did all the live sound recording. And I think a huge part of what's great about the movie is that the bands sound amazing. And you guys were talking about how a live show is only if you're really there. And I think Matt's recording and his skills mixing are so close to that real visceral feel, right?
As the sound guy in this room, yeah, I can validate that. One of the bands that really sort of struck me watching the movie, and I'd heard the name, but I hadn't really heard them, was Lost Cousins, and I think they were maybe the last performer in the movie.
Yeah, they closed the movie.
Yeah, and the sound, the music recordings are great throughout, but they recently, the song that they ended with, I believe it's called Trails.
Trails, yeah.
Yeah, they've just recently recorded and released that, and it sounds almost identical.
I think that recording is, I think it's a credit both to Matt and to that band.
Yeah.
Because that's true live. Like, that recording is not stitched together. There are moments in the movie because of like sound issues or whatever where like multiple performances are stitched together, or just for film editing reasons. Like, there's just the beginning of one take and the end of another take, just because we wanted to condense something from 5 minutes to 2 minutes or whatever. Like most of the songs in the film, except for that one and maybe one other one. I think the Be Rich one isn't edited. There's no good cut point in that Be Rich song. and it's such a catchy song that we just let it play. But yeah, it's really live, and it really sounds like so huge and perfect, and like the quality of a studio performance, but with the energy, it's really ideal. That song,
in the spirit of its namesake, it is truly live in Kingston.
Yeah. And I think even making this movie, it inspires me to want to make music, and then it also like shows me how great other musicians are. And you're like, oh, like there's a different level to this that I like.
Sort of inspiring and daunting at the same time.
I would have to reach, like, these artists really are putting in the time to their craft. There's a reason they're so great. Like, no one's great by chance.
Are there any bands you wanted to get in the movie that couldn't?
I imagined that the whole thing would end at a Tragically Hip concert. I mean, this is when I wrote it like 6 years ago, that the final show where they met up or didn't meet up or whatever happens, I'm not going to spoil the whole thing. It would be at a Hip show. And I didn't know if we would be able to show anything inside the Hip show, or that there would be footage from the Hip show at all. Mm-hmm. I didn't know how we do it, but I knew that's like where it should go. Mm-hmm. And while we were in pre-production, like the news of Gord Downey's prognosis hit, and I was just like, oh, we're not going to touch anything to do with the Hip because they have a lot more important things.
Yeah.
Like, because their friend is dying, and that's, and all the guys from the Hip they're so supportive of the local art scene. Like, you see Rob Baker at shows all the time, and I've been lucky enough to meet them at a few Miss Emily things, and they're always so nice and like just so gracious and not in any way like what you would worry. So that's the band that isn't in live in Kingston that like really should be. And if we had made it 5 years before, they certainly would have.
For me, I found the movie, exposed me to, like, for me, it was a celebration of what I already knew and appreciated and stuff. But then there was like these hidden gems. I was like, oh, I didn't know about that. Oh, that's really cool. Or like, oh, I didn't know they were from Kingston. Kind of thing. Or where is that? Like, like, what venue is that? Oh, that's cool.
Probably the Royal Tavern you're thinking of.
I like the Royal Tavern. I go in there.
There's no shortage of venues. I mean, we never had a problem that we couldn't find another venue. That was never an issue making the movie. It's amazing how many live music venues there were downtown.
Yeah.
And like they're all like they're all interesting. They all have like real space. And there were lots we didn't film at. Like there's so many you could do another movie with like 12 new venues, like no problem.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's really cool.
What's your personal favorite place to catch live music? Like, if you, assuming you get a free night from the family once in a while, like where would you escape today to catch some live music here in Kingston?
Oh, I'm gonna like offend all the venues I don't say. You're just screwing me over with this question.
Well, if I could bring a different angle to this, as a musician, where is, and maybe this is the same problem, who am I going to alienate? What is your favorite place to perform, and where is your favorite place to listen?
So the Mansion, when Casey and Will took over the Mansion, this is like so many years ago now, they put in such a great sound system, like just above and beyond what they needed to do. And it meant when you played there, it sounded good on stage, it sounded good in the crowd. And that was something, playing bars, lots of shows you're playing and you're like, well, it sounds terrible up here. I bet it sounds terrible out there. And you just can't ever relax and enjoy the performance. And you're just worried the whole show about the sound. And that venue, it just always sounds good there. And they care about how it sounds. Like they installed an extra little 80-watt speaker that hangs in the middle of the crowd because there was a dead spot because the speakers are pretty wide on that stage. And they're like, you know what? The vocals aren't coming through in this. If you're standing in this 6-foot circle, they're not. And they bothered. Like that just shows a care that as a musician, you're like, this is a great place to play. I'd love to play at Musiki. I think it's such a cool, like that cool narrow room is really neat. I haven't played there.
I'm going to put on my musician hat now and say, yeah, Musiki as a musician is a great place to play, whether you're upstairs or downstairs. I just find the upstairs is great because it just looks so great and you feel special just being on that 1 foot high riser. It's just a really cool vibe, and I find it's more like of a listening crowd too. Like if you go to there's certain bars and pubs you go to and people are listening, but there's also people who are just there anyway. I find Musiki, the people that are there are usually there for the music.
Do you think there's room for more? I mean, I feel like the more the merrier, right? It's like I heard there's a new brewery opening up downtown on Princess Street and stuff like that. I hope there's live music there, but
yeah, I think there's more room in the West End. Obviously, lots of great venues downtown. In the West End, you've got Red House in the West End. You've got Rax. Spearhead has had live music, but yeah, I think there's probably more room for some love out in the West. Yeah,
I've seen some performances at the Grand Theater. They're just amazing.
The Grand has a very unique experience, I find, because it's such it's a sit-down venue for one, which it seems like it's one of the only ones in Kingston, but it's sit-down and it's intimate, and the acts that play don't often feel like a sit-down act, so you get this almost living room feel where you're intimate with the act and people just feel comfortable enough that they go crazy. And I don't mean like jump around like a show, like go crazy, but they like just yell out whatever comes to their mind and they get this weird level of interaction that the artists seem to always go back and forth with. And that's one of my favorite things about a venue there, or a show there. That venue is just like, it's so raw in the weirdest ways.
It's a big theater, but it's like kind of like a giant living room almost.
Exactly,
right?
Yeah.
Jay, thanks so much for coming in and chatting with us and getting this show on the road.
obviously podcasts are everywhere right now, so it's not original of me to say that I'm very interested in podcasting. I think it's a really, really cool medium, this sort of open length conversation that, you know, obviously you guys have a really pro setup here, but that you don't need a giant radio tower to put out, that you can just put it out yourself is really cool. And I wish you guys all the luck with this.
Thank you. And we wish you all the best in whatever you do next, whatever that happens to be. And please keep us posted and let us know if there's any screenings of Live in Kingston coming up.
I think sometime in the near future, the film will be publicly available. It's a weird thing about independent films because we're always focused on festivals, and festivals require that you're not available. But I'm hoping we can figure out some way to get it in a way that, like, I don't want to just dump it on YouTube, but in a way that I have it have a home.
Something meaningful and
online, and then the artists can all, you know, the actors and then all the bands could point to that.
some shows you might want to check out in the next couple of months. January 13th, the Kingston Symphony is performing Beethoven at the Isabel Bader Center for the Performing Arts.
January 25th, Canadian Jazz All-Stars going down at the Grand Theatre.
Bryan Adams is at the Leon Center January 27th. That's sure to be a big deal.
He was born here, not in the Leon Center, but, you know, Kingston. February 2nd, Miss Emily and Friends, Isabel Bader Center for Performing Arts. Can't miss that.
Andy Schaaf is also at Isabel Bader. That's February 6th.
Isabel's a popular place this next couple of months. February 8th, you got the Riptides at the Mansion.
The Trues are back at the Ale House February 20th.
If you want to get heavy, February 27th, Monster Truck at the Ale House.
There's live music every Monday night at the Toucan, and Tuesday nights are open mic at Musiki and Jazz Night at Olivea. For more events in Kingston, as well as other things to do, places to eat, places to stay, check out visitkingston.ca.
I'm the king of the deadbeats, and you're the queen of the cheap seats. We're gonna spend all the money that our landlord needs from you and me. We'll wear our fanciest clothes and walk out in the snow and head north of the main drag where the cab drivers drink alone. Let's go dancing in the dark bar on the darkest side of town. They've got a Bob Dylan cover band and they're playing too loud. But I'm getting paid at midnight and all those other bills can wait. I'd rather spend my night dancing in the dark bar with you. I'd rather spend my night dancing in the dark bar with you.
To call the Wilderness a Kingston band is to leave out a good chunk of the story. Though formed in town, the quintet is made up of members from Canada, France, the UK, and the United States, brought together at a Musiki open mic in 2015. 3 short years and a few bottles of wild turkey later, the Wilderness has developed an impressive body of work. Starting in May 2015 with Sunday Afternoon, the quintet turned sextet's combination of heartland rock, folk, and blues have led them to 4 more singles, their debut LP Saxton's River, and Seminary Road, a dynamic 5-track EP released just this past November. And we have with us Jonas.
Hello.
And Karl.
Hello.
And welcome to Kingston Live.
Thanks for having us.
And Riley Jabour is with us.
Hi, I'm not in the band. I'm just in the corner.
Although we are looking to always expand, so
Yeah.
I guess we'll start talking about the EP, since that's the most recent thing. Tell us about the EP.
Seminary Road, 5-song EP. We put it out in November, and it feels very much like a first release for us because we all hate everything else that we've put out before. So we're actually really stoked on this album, and like we spent way more time being very serious about how we tackled the songwriting process and the arrangements and who we recorded with and stuff. Whereas before we were kind of like a young band who were just like, we just want to do whatever and just put out garbage. And
Well, and I thought that when I heard, for me, the song was Dancing in the Dive Bars.
Right.
To me, when I heard that, I was like, this is a band that's gone from we're a bunch of guys playing music to we're writing songs.
Thank
and this
you. I'm
is
glad
this
it
is a
shines
great
through.
song. So
Cool. Thank you.
congratulations
Thank
on
you very
making that
much.
leap, I guess.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, Seminary Road felt way more like a first release for us because we actually had time and 3 years of experience under our belts of like, you know, writing and playing and touring and stuff, that it felt like, you know, now is the time to write a serious album and do it properly. And so I feel like that actually happened, which I'm really happy about.
Sounds like a new beginning.
Totally. It feels that way too, for sure.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Let's talk for a quick second. You kind of touched on the beginning, the formation of the
Yes.
band, because a Kingston venue played a pretty big part in that, Musiki.
Yep.
Do you want to kind of talk about that? And also, like, Kingston seems to have this unique culture that some cities don't have of cross-pollination between every band. A musician knows
Yeah,
everybody. So
for sure.
did that play into it?
100%.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, like the origins of the band really like start with like Sasha and I like just getting together writing songs, and then we eventually met Henry and like jammed with him once or twice, and that kind of went on and off for like about a year, and then we realized, you know, we're trying to record and we're only getting really bad products, so like let's just go and play, and we're gonna just go and play every single open mic we can in this new coming year, because it was like, you know, January or something. And we went to one open mic, played, and I think the second open mic we played was that open mic at Musiki where we met Jonas, who was working there at the time. And then I didn't know Jonas. Sasha had known Jonas from before, and so that's kind of where that interconnectivity comes in. And so he just invited Jonas to come jam with us, and that's how we decided to go and have our first rehearsal, and that's where we decided to name the band and to keep doing it.
Yeah.
I find Musiki such a unique place, and it's just this tiny, tiny place, but there's just been so much great talent coming through there, and it has become kind of almost a hub in itself of talent and people coming together.
Yeah, I think a big part of that is them being so inclusive about like, you know, like their open mic night is like so popular, and it kind of blows my mind, because when I traditionally thought of open mics, it was like, okay, well, that's where you go to see like, you know, your brother or whatever, somebody who like, you know, who plays guitar, go play and then you leave or whatever. But people are really supportive there. They fill up the place for open mic nights. Everybody stays all throughout. And then, you know, what you end up getting is like the people who actually care about the craft or the performance. They're the ones who show up and like sign up and then will go and play. And so you end up with a really pretty good roster.
Mm-hmm. And people are really supportive there too. Like you see all kind of levels of talent. You see people playing their for their first time in front of anyone ever at open mic, and then you also, you know, you'll have someone who's just passing through town who's been on tour with big bands and is a session musician or what have you. Like the level of talent goes from, you know, absolute beginner to pro, and no one is an asshole about it. You know what I mean? People will sit and listen and support the people who are out there for the first time the same way that they would for someone who's been doing it for 50 years, which I think is really valuable, and you don't get that very often.
Well, while we're talking about Kingston connections, this is kind of a roundabout way to get back to Kingston here, but I know one of your biggest influences, one of your favorite bands, is Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band, who encapsulates like the New Jersey sound so well.
Yeah, totally.
And he's such an influence to so many bands that they take his own sound, but also they don't sound identical to each other. Mm-hmm. So with Kingston being such a musical hub, do you find that Kingston has its own sound, its own identity that you can kind of hear in some other acts, or like this flavor to it that it seems to add?
For sure, 100%. In fact, one of the best compliments that I've got about this band was actually at the Lost Cousins show at the Grad Club a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking to them about their move to Toronto and blah, blah, blah. And Thomas, the keyboard player, was like, but you guys just sound so Kingston. And I was like, fuck yeah, man, that's awesome. Like a bunch of people from not Kingston, and we're here, you know, just being a band in the city, and we were told that we sound like Kingston. I love that. That gives me a real sense of pride, because I think Kingston has a great music scene that is better than 90% of other towns of this size in the world. Like, I don't know any other towns that have like, you know, 125,000 people that you could go on any night of the week and see like top-notch talent music at 20 different places, you know? And, you know, you've got a ton of great bands that have come out of this town that, you know, everyone knows about and has heard of. So it gives me a definite sense of pride to when people say that, you know, we sound like a Kingston band. And I think a Kingston sound is pretty rock and roll, but it's also got like a little bit of Canadiana in there that, you know, is pretty unique. Like the Glorious Sons' most recent album, like perfectly encapsulates that sound for me. It's like, it sounds like blue collar rock and roll, but also like very uniquely Canadian and very uniquely even Kingston. Cause like, you know, you listen to the song like Come Down or Godless, Graceless, and Young. It's like take a walk down Main Street, ain't it the most charming thing that you've ever seen? Like, I'm like, fuck yeah, I live around the corner from that place. I know exactly what you're talking about. So, yeah, there is definitely a Kingston sound that it's quite eclectic, but also once you hear it, you know what it is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Well, and about your sound, and I find this interesting because I do agree that you guys do sound like a Kingston band, but at the same time, you've got keys, you've got horns, there's all these elements.
Yeah.
But the sound, it's still grounded somehow.
I know what you mean, and I think it's because, like, you know, other than the keys and the horns, it's very pretty straight up rock and roll. So, like, everything else is kind of, you know, the decorations around it, and, like, when it's tastefully done, then it works, and it seems to just gel really nicely, and it can, I guess, when we're, you know, trying to set up and play a live show, it feels like it's going to be a really big production. But then when we're all on point and playing together, it tightens right up and it becomes kind of one thing, you know?
I'm curious, dancing in the dive bars.
Yes.
Is there a particular dive bar that inspired that song?
Reyes and the Toucan.
The two.
Yeah. The lyrics do say, like, go north of the main drag, and when I think of that lyric, I always think of the Reyes on Concession Street, but I've never been there.
Is that ever reopening?
Yeah, we drove past it today.
Yeah.
Like, I have no idea.
I feel like they've been closed for didn't the roof leak? But they're like, there's a whole unit above them. Like, what happened in there?
I don't
idea.
I don't know. But dancing in the dive bars, I always do think of the Toucan.
Let's talk about touring for a second. You guys tour a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
What keeps you on the road?
Fear.
Bondo?
And Bondo.
Yeah, Bondo does a good part. But I think, like, from the inception of this band, we wanted to tour mostly for the adventure, and also always had, like, aspirations of, like, you know, trying to expand our fan base to be a little bit wider than just Kingston. Because, like, we had a feeling that, like, you know, if we just play Kingston all the time, we're just going to be a Kingston band, and we don't want to be that in the end. And so we did our first tour September after we had just formed in January, so it was, like, really fast. But that was, like, you know, when I was, like, you know, 23 or something, and you guys were 21.
We just turned 21.
And, like, we were just young, and, like, it was just, like, a magical adventure with four boys in a Honda Odyssey driving, like, where was the farthest point we got to there?
Like South Dakota or Nebraska or somewhere like that.
Like
Kansas.
We did a
it was
loop.
Kansas.
Yeah, we did a loop of, like, the Midwest, and spent a little bit of time in the South, and it was amazing that it all worked out.
Yeah,
we came out with $14, which was incredible.
It was just such an adventure, and, like, we really lucked out and played some amazing shows that I wish we could go back and play now, having been a band for nearly 4 years. You know, that we'd been a band for 25 minutes, and we played at this place in Chicago called the Empty Bottle, which is, like, an amazing venue and open for a really good band. And we played a music festival in South Dakota. And I still to this day have no idea how it came about, but that first tour for me was like, this is exactly what I have to be doing forever, because it was the most fun. And we've toured a lot since then.
And then the second tour was when we sort of got the reality check of, like, these are possible problems that you can face, so you're going to get all of them, and then see how you do. Like, we bought a new vehicle for that second tour, which broke down after the second show.
Well, it broke down before the second show. We arrived at the Horseshoe Tavern at Queen and Spadina on the back of a tow truck. Like, that AAA driver or CAA driver turns up and he's like, you guys got 200 kilometers, where do you want to go? And I'm like, can you go to the Horseshoe Tavern? And he's like, all right, let's go.
Yeah.
And then, the next day, the van, like, blew up, bit the dust, done.
I feel like every band with a great tour story also has a great band van name. Are you the guys to name your van? And if so, what have the van's names been?
The first one, Rhonda the Honda. Then the van that blew up in Ottawa was called Chocolate. And then we had Bonda, which was the bus that was held together with Bondo, so we called it Bonda. And then our van right now doesn't have a name.
Not really. There's been a lot of good name suggestions, but none of them have really stuck.
Yeah.
What's next for the Wilderness?
We got a little tour in January. I guess what we want to do after that is write some more and record some more, apply for some grants so we can get more content out. Like, I think we want to record another EP in the coming year. because we took down Saxon's River and the other EP that we did when we were just wee little babies. So we want to just be able to put out more content and match like our music presence online to the quality of like our live show.
Yeah, I think like from the beginning of this band, we've always been kind of, recording and touring every year. And so, but the progression of it has all been about doing each of those things better. And so, yeah, it's going to be more of the same, more recording, more touring, but hopefully, there'll be bigger and better tours and the music will be, better sounding, better writing, always improving, I guess, is kind of the
Slow but
mantra.
constant progression.
Yeah, exactly.
Any advice you guys would have to aspiring musicians?
I think it's so important that you do play with people that you get along with and that who have the same drive, because I can't imagine it'd be very much fun to play in a band with people who didn't want to achieve the same things as you do. Get out.
You're going to spend a lot of time together,
Yeah.
so you got to be on the same wavelength.
Yeah. I guess my biggest piece of advice was once you find those people you want to play music with and you feel that you've got some songs that are worth sharing, then get out and fucking play shows and go on tour. I think going on tour for the first time will give you a real sense of pride and achievement if you pull it off, and then also it will make you realize, is this something actually that I want to do with my life, or is this something that I'm happy just to kind of do as a hobby? But don't let the countless hardships that will be thrown your way deter you from keeping going, because one day you'll be playing a show that you've sold out or something, and you wouldn't believe the progress that you've made. That happened to us recently, and it was crazy to think that we'd gone from playing shows to literally 0 people to being able to sell out a venue in our hometown. It was a really great feeling.
Awesome.
Groovy.
Much, Karl.
Thanks so
much.
much.
That was great.
Yeah,
Awesome.
thank you, guys.
And for anyone interested in hearing the new Wilderness EP, Seminary Road, it's available on YouTube, Apple Music, Spotify, and physical copies are available at their shows. This has been Kingston Live for January 2019. Recorded by Titan Sound in Kingston, Ontario. Hosted by John Sanfilippo and Riley Jabour. Writing and research by Peter Sanfilippo. Executive producer Rob Howard. And thank you to the generous support of our music-loving friends at Tourism Kingston, who helped make this all possible. Check out the latest live music listings and many other experiences our great city has to offer at visitkingston.ca. We'd love to hear from you. Email your thoughts, ideas, criticisms, insults, whatever you like, to podcast@kingstonlive.ca.